to remember to hit the go live button. Remember that?
Yeah,
That was important to do that.
go west, young man.
Go west, young
Head
man.
west. How the west was won.
Let's see. Are we live? Let's refresh our feed here.
I like how we just start this off just riffing, like, it's kind of like, hey, we don't know what we're gonna do. We're just gonna.
It's all good. Yep. Uh, I think it's live. I gotta reboot my phone though.
Yeah.
Um, do you have that issue? Do you have that issue with YouTube? Like sometimes you'll try to play a video and it'll say, "Sorry, something went wrong with like the sad face," and then you have to reboot your phone.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah. Is that what's going on with you?
Yeah. Oh no, that's just. I guess it's an issue with the iPhone and YouTube
Oh,
the way that works. Andy, old
is
radio.
Andy here? All right.
He
Of
says, "Oh
course.
hi." It's just like riding a rusty bicycle, Steve.
There you go. Well, good. Welcome, Andy. I'm currently logging into YouTube now, attempting to, because we're Mark and I are the utmost, or should I say, I am rather. Let me not
Yeah.
throw him under the bus with me.
Well, you look better. You look better, Steve.
Thank you. Is it because I've lost weight or?
No, no. It's I mean earlier
Oh,
from when we were trying it and having all the technical difficulties, and
yeah,
uh,
it was not good.
you look a lot better now.
It was not good.
I'm not sure why. And now, of course, Zoom has all these apps that they've added to the side of the thing that do absolutely nothing. So we'll just have to do that. So hello, it's been
Hi.
it's been a
Uh,
long time, been a long time, been a long lonely time.
Speaking of which, I was listening to that before we came on. I
Oh
was
yeah,
like, it's been a little while since I've played any Led Zeppelin, so
you've done the stroll.
I have.
So yeah,
So
we're good. We're live. So uh, Andy said, let me hold on a second. I gotta figure out how to get this going here. So, been going through a lot of my 45s. I made a Discogs page and got through them over 1,800 cataloged and getting rid of
you,
dupes. I have a whole lot still listening. Decide if I want to keep or get rid of.
that is funny you should say that, Andy. I was gifted about a month and a half ago. I was gifted probably 645s and these different colored spindles. And I've been going through and decided what I want. And basically, from what I was told, the guy my father-in-law who gave them me essentially the guy he got them from said that from like 1958 to like 1988 every couple of weeks he bought a 45 whatever the hot 45 was. So there's stuff from like the 40s and all the way to Santana, all the way to Tiffany. So it's a pretty wild collection, and I've kind of been going through it and looking at it and doing the same thing, deciding what I'm going to keep, what I'm going to get rid of. So, let me know if there's something you're looking for. There's a lot of country in there, and there's a lot of bad country in there. So if you're into not good country, I pretty much got you covered. So,
That would be something that'd be kind of interesting to go through and um, if you're just every week you just purchase the number one song in America at the time on 45. And if you already have it, then get the number two song that following week. That'd be a pretty fun sort of thing to do over a long course of time, I guess. So,
I should have grabbed it. Like he has the book too. He's got like a little it looks like a Rolodex almost with just kind of like everything written down in it and
oh,
whatnot.
nice.
So the dude was definitely like a collector even way back when, and very everything's cataloged and all that. Which I know for you and I, it's like finally,
I've had two collections that I've purchased that were like that. One was in like a little box, and it was like I think it could hold about 50 45s, and
Yeah,
then it was like
exactly.
the paper was saying like all 50 what was in the box, and there's okay, keep that one, and then whatever. So
I've gone through them and kind of condensed and combined. And like, all right, I'm getting rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that. This has got still got to go through. So that's funny that you should say that, man. So
so Andy said, me too. Spent a whole bunch at the antique store and decided to make a Discogs. Found some sort of acetate 45 in that bunch, and that's cool. I think there's, you know, 45s. I want to say is still kind of a bit of the Wild West, I think, as far as vinyl is concerned.
I would agree.
There's people just not collecting. I mean, if it's a picture sleeve, those are collectible. Like people will buy those,
Yeah.
which I don't think is too much different than it was a couple of years ago. But the having like 45s, like that's it's still some uncharted territory. I know when I first started collecting, that was sort of what I started with because those were always,
Really?
yeah, I mean, those they were always like a quarter at the thrift stores and stuff like that. So just kind of going through, and then I think that really sort of made my focus label centric, where you would say, oh, here's a specific label, and then you knew when you saw that label, it was like, oh, I got to pick that up. That's something that's cool or rare or obscure, and I think just
Yeah.
that, when I look at rock and roll music in general, like I feel that kind of push over the cliff really started like 1957. If you look at a lot of the stuff that came out like 57, 58, and
Hmm.
then that kind of takes us into the modern era. But at that time, there were all those one hit wonders that were on those like
Oh yeah.
local labels or whatever. So
Well, what's interesting about 45s, I think that they're either worth a good amount or they're worth next to nothing. Like there's really no middle ground. Like I don't know of a $3 45. I only know of like a quarter 45, and then something that's $10 and on up from there. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, and I just think that's I think the appeal is, there's all the like when I worked at the record store, we had a guy that was like just called him doo-wop guy because he would just come in and that's all that he was looking for. And
Yeah, Robert
um,
Crumb.
I mean, yeah, kind of in the same, yeah, kind of in the same thing, except he weighed, closer to maybe 300 pounds instead of like 125 pounds. But
Soaking
um,
wet with the brick in each pocket.
but but yeah, he would come in and he would always, he was always buying like a little stack of 45s. And, again, nobody really paid too much attention to them. But at that time, our LPs were 3 for $5. So, and it was all that stuff that was, the stuff that was a little bit
Mm-mm-mm.
better than Dollar Bin back 20 years ago. And then they were 3 for $5. So I was thinking about that the other day too, and I was just like, that just blew my mind to think that,
How
that
many Steely Dan albums you should have snatched up and
that and Fleetwood Mac and everything like that. So, um, yep, 45s from bands that only released 45s, and that's definitely a thing too. So,
yep.
um,
Lots of punk, lots of garage, as
yeah,
Andy just threw in there.
yeah, that stuff is, again, it was cheap to do that to press the 45s. Hey, here's our song. You go in and you don't need much studio time to do just two songs. I mean, probably an hour or whatever. They cut it live. There wasn't much overdubbing, anything like that. So,
And
you know,
theoretically, you've rehearsed it once or twice in the garage before you go in there and
exactly.
bust it out.
Yeah. So, Steve, let's get into it. Oh, first
Yeah,
off,
man.
this show is not sponsored by the Turner's Iron City beer iced tea, um, but yeah, maybe
I've
later.
got High Life, baby. If you've got the time,
You got
we've got the beer.
the champagne of beers, basically.
Yeah.
So, cheers, my good
Uh,
friend.
Likewise. Hey, check this out. You see what Leslie made me? Look at that. Isn't that
Oh,
hip?
there you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
So
Um, so tonight we wanted to talk about what we're going to talk about Iron Butterfly. We're going to take a large percentage of the time to talk about that.
yeah.
But let's just go through a couple of things real quick. I wanted to talk about so last week was a terrible day for terrible week for Canadian musicians. We lost
Yeah.
Tim Bachman, which sort of disappeared among the. Did you even know that he passed away? Do you know who Tim
I
Bachman?
did. I did. I
Yeah.
saw just a little blurb about it. Yeah.
Well, and then of course Gordon Lightfoot sort of uh, superseded that. But yeah, Gordon Lightfoot. It's definitely sad to see him go. I know that he really had. I think he didn't he struggle with he was like alcoholism towards like maybe the last couple of years, and then he kind of
Has he? I didn't know that.
yeah he would miss shows and things like that. I think he had some.
Hmm.
Um, I'm talking maybe probably 10, 15 years ago at this point. So um, there was an opportunity to go see him, and I just really wasn't again, not necessarily somebody that you're like, I gotta go see Gordon Lightfoot, you know what I mean? But man, his music was definitely, he had some pretty fabulous records. So, would you like to? Do you have any favorite Gordon Lightfoot? I know you're a good Gordon Lightfoot fan. What are some of your
Yeah.
favorites?
I mean, obviously, I think. Sundown and all that kind of stuff is really great. But I think that The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald is one of the greatest songs ever written. If you and I were ever, and I'm sure we'll get there eventually, going to compile like a top 10 forever song compilation, that would surely be on there. I just think that song is
Shirley?
absolutely surely be
Sure.
on there. So
One thing that really sticks out in my mind is, um, well, there's kind of two things about Gordon Lightfoot. That one is, when years ago when I worked at a job and I was, just sort of, um, in high school at the time, and they played the music that they played was all like the 60s and 70s. Well,
yeah,
most of it was like 70s with a little bit of 80s, and then there was like the occasional 60s stuff that came through. But um, they played a ton of Gordon Lightfoot on
really,
the music, yeah. And one thing that was kind of interesting is that, so like my brother was working at this job at sort of this hardware store kind of place, and when we were both sort of in the workforce, we'd come home. We were both living with my parents at the time, and we'd be like, "Hey, I heard this song today," and we're like, "Oh yeah, I heard that song too." And so, we really didn't think much about it. We just would sort of like, every day, hey, I heard this song or I heard this song. And, those songs now are like ingrained in our heads. So if we hear those, we're like, oh, that song just reminds me of that
kind
time.
of takes you back to it. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, but there was one day that, uh, so we both sort of knew Gordon Lightfoot songs. He was like one artist that we both were like, that's Gordon Lightfoot. We knew that. So I said, like, every time that you hear a Gordon Lightfoot song, write the songs down that you're hearing, right? And I think that there might have been a conversation that we said maybe write the times down when you hear it too. So we went through and we did that, and then when we both got home from work, we had the exact same list of Gordon Lightfoot songs, and we realized that the music that they were playing in that store was the same that was in the other store.
Wow.
But yeah, so I mean, he definitely has a soft place in my heart there for that first album. The Lightfoot album is
Yeah.
incredible. Um, just really maybe his first four that he did on United Artists, I think are good. I've seen a lot of people posting about that. The way I feel. That was always he had two versions of it. There's like the acoustic version, and then there's well, they both were acoustic, but just sort of him and acoustic guitar. But then there was another version, the Back Here on Earth one, that was sort of the psychedelic one, and I would usually sneak that into my radio show, because it has like really the reverb on it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know which version I'm talking about?
I'd have to go back and listen to it. I don't know that I've ever heard that version.
I'll play it for you.
Okay.
But it basically just has like the drums in it are like like super reverb. Like it just sounds like they're in another, just like you know, um, and he's just doing the song. And then there's the guitar. There's like it's not like I would say it has psychedelic elements to the guitar. It just sort of has like kind of sounds like an airplane going over. Like just real. I don't know how
Jimmy
to.
Page-ish.
Yeah, like it's not like it's subtle, but
Yeah.
it kind of just gives you like that sort of psychedelic, like you're just sort of kind of floating kind of thing. But that's a great track. Um, so yeah, he's sad to see that he's gone, and of course you sent me that post where there was the new arrivals at the at the at the
Yeah,
record
yeah.
store that
Yeah,
yeah, okay, sure.
what did you say? Like, yeah, they've been sitting and rotting in the dollar bin for a year or 2 years, and now they're like, "Hey, these are $5 a piece."
Right.
Good
So
old capitalism.
oh man, so yeah, that's you want to sell more records, just pass away, and you'll sell more records. Just who's still in the dollar bins that are just like, I mean, the Barbra Streisand ones are still there. Um,
Herb Albert.
Herb Alpert are still, they're not as plentiful as they used to be. I mean, back
Well,
in
it's
the
because you
day.
bought all of them. Didn't haven't you posed with like 30 copies of it?
Every time I'd see a copy, I'd take a picture of it.
Oh, so you didn't buy them?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I do have
Because
I do have, I think I do have a stereo and mono copy of Whipped Cream and Other Delights that were like in the shrink wrap. They were like brand new copies of that. Yeah, Engelbert Humperdinck. That's right. So hey Jimmy, thanks for joining us. Um,
thank you, thank you.
and but I have that, and then anytime I would see like either the ones that were like the Taiwan, like this sort of quasi bootleg kind of pressings, those ones I would try to pick those ones up. So I don't know if I have a whipped cream of that one. It might be like the Going Places one, the one he's in an airplane and
I've
things like that.
it's funny you should bring those up. I've got a Deja Vu, Frampton Comes Alive, and I want to say a Neil Diamond album that I picked up for $1 just because they were just so, they were obviously bootlegs, really bad looking bootlegs. I was like, I should get these.
Yeah. Um,
So
I mean, those are cool. I think that there's like, I mean, that they're not, obviously, like you
you
said,
know what you're buying, obviously.
right,
Yeah, it's
exactly. But it's
yeah,
just cool to see that again. It's one of those things like I kind of feel the same way about import records. Like if I just found an import, or if I found like, oh hey, here's the French pressing, or here's the UK pressing of whatever, I would always kind of like buy that just because it was it's unique. I mean, it's not something you're going to find every day over here. So
yeah.
um, sometimes bootlegs are worth something. Let me tell you a story or two about bootlegs, Andy. um, but yeah,
Have you
that's.
heard of Pink Floyd?
Let me tell you about the records I used to buy. Um, yeah, no, bootlegs are. That's kind of Steve and I think that's sort of what we're kind of our headspace are these days. We're not really buying any, not like any of the artists that we enjoy are putting out anything worthwhile.
You mean you
For,
don't
for
want the 30th remastered copy of whatever? Who's next? The definitive super duper deluxe edition.
yeah,
I mean, where does it end with that stuff?
it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
When
Like,
there's no tapes left in the vault, that's when it ends. So
well, certainly some of those bands have fished that lake dry. I mean, but you look at people like the Grateful Dead and Frank Zappa who just have this vast catalog that
so
they're continuously cranking stuff out.
thoughts on that? Did you see the Grateful Dead 1973 box set that
Yeah,
they
no,
did?
that's really cool. I've got those shows already, but I'm sure the artwork and the packaging is going to be superb. But I mean, yeah, I mean it's 73 Dead. You can't
Which
you can't go wrong.
I think that to me that's sort of, I know that like everybody kind of bangs on about 77 and 72, and I think that 73 is pretty great just because you have a lot of new songs that were introduced into that time frame, and you also have the things that were from those solo albums that sort of eked into the set list as well. So
And you still have your dark stars too, so you get like your dark star and your eyes of the world. It's like, man, what
yeah,
that's a pretty substantial combo. So
and I think I've told you 70, like my probably my favorite era of 73 um is like that early fall, like that September tour, the Horn Tours
yeah,
one. That's pretty cool. And then it's just interesting to just if you look at the time frames because it's like right, so they do that tour. So that's with Doug Sam. They have all the. That's a great album, by the way, too. That I know we've talked about that in the past, but um, he's touring on that album, so he brings the horn musicians with them. Grateful Dead pull them out for a couple of tunes. They do Weather Report, and I think there was a Dark Star that they sat in on or something like that. So
I'm quite sure. Yeah,
yeah,
there
yeah.
has to be.
I think I think the College of William and Mary show is the one that has that.
That's
Um,
one of the best shows of '73, if not the best of '73. I mean that's a pretty solid show.
but after that, then Jerry goes with Merle Saunders and does the Keystone stuff. So all of that happens in like October of '73, October and November of '73, I think. Um,
Never a dull moment, man. Just
and
think about
yeah,
that. Like there's always something cooking.
and then they have um, and then there's the Boston Music Hall in December of which was I think Dick's Picks 14, I think was that one. So, woo, here we go. I'm digging in the old files up there, Steve. I
I
haven't
was
had
gonna
to.
say you're just riffing, man. You got this. Here's this one. Here's that one. Here's this one.
Yeah. Uh,
So
Andy asks,
it's like
have you?
riding a psychedelic bike.
That's right. Have you seen the 1970 documentary called Dynamite Chicken? There's a song that's called "God Loves Rock and Roll." Plays in the movie. It's so catchy.
I have not.
Yeah, we'll have to check it.
I know God gave rock and roll to you by Argent, and then Chip.
What's Kiss up to these days? What are they releasing, Steve?
Uh,
Just for our Kiss fans that may be in
they
attendance.
so I'm just talking to myself for the next 5 minutes. I got you. They put out Poughkeepsie in '84, which was their only known soundboard record. Marco's on his phone to check his email.
Yep, here we go. Check an email.
Which was their only known soundboard recording with Mark James, who had Writer's syndrome and only was with them to record some of Animalized and then played a few shows with them before he unfortunately had to step down. But that's come out. And if you like the F bomb and Paul Stanley going, here's a little song between literally every single song, then that is a tape for you. But
So
they're continuing the final leg of their
so this
final
is, you said
tour
this is
ever.
84. This is when this is
84.
84.
Yeah.
So basically at that point, Peter Criss and both
Oh,
Peter
they
Criss and
long
Ace
since
Frehley
gone.
are long gone out of the band.
Yeah,
Okay.
long since gone. Makeup's off. They're very much trying to keep up with bands like Rat and Cinderella and Twisted Sister who were in vogue at the time. So it's kind of it's a part in their history that like I like because I've listened to it forever and a day, and it's kind of like one of the stuff you look at it for with such nostalgia and you can't really like judge it fairly. But it's just kind of sad that you have these guys who were one of the purveyors of I guess hard rock and whatnot, just kind of trying to keep up with the new flavor, and some of it works and some of it doesn't.
Nothing will top Kiss Revenge on every single Marvel the comic book. When was that? 1990? Was that when that came out? 92?
91. And
91.
it's funny you should say that because I took my daughter to the comic book store today to pick out some dollar comics, and I was flipping through some of that stuff and looking at it, and I looked at some of those old X-Men issues from like 90, 91, and boom, there you go, Kiss Revenge. If it wasn't on the back, then it was in the gatefold next to like some NES games or whatnot, and I was like, man, they were really like targeted in kind of like, you're a nerd, you like comic books, you probably like Kiss too.
You
So
think
that's
it?
the strategic marketing.
You probably you think that all of those that they released or the ad revenue that they made from Kiss for those
Oh yeah,
probably financed quite a few of those comics back in
I'm
the early
sure Stan
90s.
Lee bought a Ferrari with that money. So
So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. I don't know if there's anything else that was um, Lick It Up
I
is the
want to.
scariest music video ever. The way they stare at the camera is terrifying, and that's the same way that they had been staring for whatever. It's just they didn't have the makeup
There's
on.
there's a part in it right before the chorus where Gene goes
It's yeah,
like
lick
that.
it up, lick
So
it up. Yeah.
but yeah, dude, that song holds such a like odd place in my heart, just because I know it's trash, but it's like, dude, I heard it when I was 10. I was like, oh, that's awesome. This is the coolest thing in the world.
And they'd
So
always they'd always play that on VH1 every time that they were talking about Kiss, and they would bring Kiss into like the modern era. It would be that song. That would be the one
modern
that
era, it's 1983, it's
right.
2000 and whatever when you're watching it.
So
So,
yeah, man,
but
good stuff. All right, so let's talk about Iron Butterfly. What do you want to talk about
well,
with Iron
can
Butterfly?
I show some records before we jump into that? Just
Yeah.
real quick.
Oh yeah,
I
sure.
just want to show you. I'll be fast. This is one I think I showed you. This is Neil Young and Stray Gators. This is
Tuscaloosa.
an yeah, dude. This is fantastic. It's essentially a bunch of Harvest Tunes live, and it's so good. This is part of his archive releases, and
I think I may
if
have
it's
that on CD. I
dude, it's fantastic. It's so good. It's so good.
his yeah, I got that. I got that on CD.
Yeah, there you go.
I wasn't it's one of those things that like I went to the record store the one time and they had somebody had just like dumped off a bunch of those and they were like $6 a piece and I was like, yep, it's like
That's a steal.
I'm gonna get that. So I'll
Here's
give it a listen again.
here's our wrestling tie-in for this evening.
There you go.
This is a great record. I
Map.
love it.
That's got Cinnamon Girl on it, so you can tie that back to that Neil Young from
So
before.
it works, man. No, this is really good.
I just
I
love
really
how
like it. I mean,
Gentry's is it looks just like doo doo, like they made it in doo doo. Look at how it looks.
dude, now I won't be able to look at this and say that's straight doo doo, baby.
That's doo doo, baby. Oh
Yeah,
man,
I didn't notice that. What were
yes,
they going for with that? Like wood?
doo doo. Just hey, this record is absolute doo doo. You know what's funny? You used to see that record all the time. That was one like I forget what's the other. It's like a blue record. It's like Dance with the Gentrys. Is that what the first one's
Yeah,
called?
it's
Yeah.
like that was a single off
Keep
of
on
it.
dancing. Keep on
Keep
dancing
on
is what
dancing
it
or
is.
dance something
Yeah.
dancing.
Yeah. So
Dan- um,
dancing
I,
fool. So
now
so
here,
yeah, for the listeners, I mean, we just had a bunch of in jokes about that. So that record is by the Gentrys, a band that was out of Memphis,
Memphis,
Tennessee,
Tennessee. Is that
and
how they talk in Memphis, Tennessee?
that's right, and none other than the Math of the South, Jimmy Hart was
Jimmy
on that.
Hart.
Yeah, so
In fact,
he's like
you
front and
can
center
see
on the
him.
back, right? Yeah.
He's
Oh, there
look,
he is, right
yeah.
there. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
like, get in there, Hulk! Get in there,
Oh,
Hulk!
I
Yeah,
was gonna
get
say.
in there, Hulk!
Now, here is a couple of Moog synthesizers, which I would be curious if you have. This is called the Electric Zodiac by Douglas Leedy. Look at this. Are
Oof.
you are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
This is a fantastic album.
What label's it
This
on?
is this is on Capitol, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
He had this in a Christmas album before I guess he went back to his mathematician job before in the 80s when he went solo under Weird Al.
Hmm.
But no, I'm just kidding. But no, this is a great record. This is psych, moog, ambient, what you want to call it. But this is really great. I highly recommend this. And his Christmas album is really good too. It's more of the same. It's just "Oh Come All Ye Faithful" with like a Moog synthesizer and like sounds like you're in D space. And the last record I'm going to show.
I was just thinking of Lucky Man. Where oh
What a
come
lucky
all ye
man
faithful.
I is.
We do.
But this is another one that I've been playing for my house plants, and I've used it for its intended purpose, and that is Plantasia.
Oh, there you go.
Are
All
you
right.
familiar with
Not
this?
familiar with that.
Dude, this is again, this is great.
Is that a
Look at how
reissue or
happy he is.
is that a
No, yeah, no, this is a reissue,
okay? Because I know that they
and
had
it's on.
Light in the Attic, maybe? No.
Yes, I believe. No, Sacred Bones,
Okay.
but I thought it was Light in the Attic. Yeah, that sounded right, but look.
Ooh, green.
So so I would suggest picking that up, and the digital download card is on some kind of material where you can plant it then later, so you can recycle it. So
Interesting.
I think that's pretty neat. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So that's what I've been digging lately. I've been playing it a lot, and there maybe there's truth to some of that stuff because my plants are doing really well. So
Andy has
and I'm
the
not I'm talking about.
legal stuff. The Andy says that he's got the Zodiac
I,
one.
I have to it's. Oh man, that's funny. So, but yeah, it's good stuff, man. I would suggest everybody pick that up.
Cool.
So, Mark, you want to get anything? You want me to jump head first
Uh,
into Iron Butterfly?
so no, I have. I'll show you what I do. I have been listening to. So this is the newest Grapefruit. It's called "Too Much Sun Will Burn." Who sings that, Steven? Too much sun will
Uh,
burn. You know it. Paper sun
Brutus the
traffic.
Barber Beefcake.
No. So
There you go.
this is the British Psychedelic Sounds of 1967, Volume 2. And just
Ooh,
all those bands that Tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of already had on here. Which is cool. I just love these to just you just put them on and of course the
put them
booklet
on and do what you. Yeah.
do what you got to do and
So my
do
white
everything about them.
bicycle.
I don't know if that version might be on there. No, it's Revolution is what's on there
That
by Tomorrow, but I think they do have. I don't know. Maybe they do have
yeah, Madman Running Through the Field by what's his something Chariot.
Dentalon's
You know that
Chariot.
song? Yeah, that one.
I don't know if that is on. Actually, that is on. I think this one. It's you since you've said it. So this one is the one before. It's called Deviation Street, and it's High Times in Ladbroke Grove, 1967 to 1975. Ladbroke Grove, that area of London, was pretty much the Haight Ashbury of London. So you had a lot of bands like the Deviants
Right
and
on.
Hawkwind obviously was from there as well too. So
Nice.
Pretty Things, all that. So you have a lot of those, those bands that were just a little, I don't know, a little rough around the edges. Pink Fairies, did I say them already? High Tide, that
What's the name of
band.
that record?
What is it called?
Yeah.
It's called
Yeah.
Deviation
What's the
Street.
name of the?
Yeah.
That sounds like a Lost Phil Ox album.
What's I ain't marching anymore on Deviation Street. Yeah, so I've been listening to those. And then again, they have another one coming out, I think in June. That's that one that's the American rock, which it's I have pretty much everything that's on there, but it's still going to be nice to have because there's the best part about CDs are the bonus tracks and the outtakes and
Oh
non-album
yeah.
sides and all that. So um, that's that. So let's hear about
Well,
Iron
cool.
Butterfly.
All right. So what I have done, Mark, is I have gone painstakingly through and made copious amounts of notes, and
Let's talk about the
we
first
can.
off. So Iron Butterfly. Before you get into this, because I know that you spent a lot of time into this. Um, I will say that they are a band that I've just never paid attention to, and I don't know why. Um,
Well,
I do have
be,
I do have this.
because it's easy to just dismiss them.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
So this is the five classic albums. So the first pretty much first five albums from Iron Butterfly. I honestly I couldn't be bothered to pull the records out. I have a few of them. I know I have Ball. I know
Yeah.
Metamorphosis was another one that was a dollar album for like the last
Forever.
15 years probably. I don't know if it definitely still isn't anymore, but um, I just it's I never I don't know. And I tried listening to them today. I listened to quite a bit today. I just sort of when we talked about it, I sort of was cycling through them. But like, it, what are they missing? What is it? Is it the guy's singing voice? Is that the problem?
Riff. I'm not a big fan of Doug Ingles' voice. First of all, I'm not a big fan of his voice, and I don't hear the riff. Like I don't even hear a good organ riff like you would in a Doors tune or anything like that. That's what I can pick up on. Is there's no that and there's no discernible beat. Hum a Iron Butterfly song. You can't.
Well, if there's
You
one,
can't.
yeah, there's one you can.
Okay, which is why it's their biggest hit, right?
Right. So would you say that? Would you say that they're and it's weird because I watched those videos that you sent me, and we'll talk about that too.
Would
But
you? Yeah. Well, I want to get your thoughts on that.
well, here's the interesting thing, right? So, and maybe we're putting the cart before the horse. So we'll talk about them when we get to
We'll
them.
get to that. Yeah,
Let's do that. But
we got a ways to go first.
but I do want to talk about that. So, but I feel like they were sort of to me they're right there with Vanilla Fudge. They had one hit that was like huge, absolutely massive. It was a long song, so it was that
Yep.
FM radio sort of like I gotta go take a dump and I'm gonna put this on and I'll be back once Inagata Davida is done. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like I think in a way like yeah, it's like that song just was transcendent. Um, but I think it really spotlights everything that was wrong with the psychedelic movement in general. I mean, but again, they were a band that
And why?
I was gonna say they sort of
And,
transitioned, right? You think about, they were there from the like 1967 is their first album. They were putting out albums pretty much from 67 to 71 pretty consistently. Um, but there was nothing on it. You know what I mean? Like there was just I don't know.
there's all sizzle but no steak. You know, it's like it has the allure of like, man, this is going to be psychedelic. This is going to be heavy. This is going to be really great. But they just don't get that way. You know, there's just not a whole lot there. Like I see so much like bright spots, potential bright spots, you know, of like having like a Blue Cheer, not as heavy as Blue Cheer, obviously, because hardly any bands are, but they could have really moved in that direction. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay.
You want to? I'm going to go ahead and jump in, unless
Yeah.
you've got more. I don't
No,
want to
let's
cut you
let's
off.
let's go for it. So really what we
So,
kind of start with their first album 1967 with Heavy. right?
Well, so I've gotten 66. They formed in San Diego with Doug Engel on organ and vocals, Jack Penny on drums, Greg Willis on bass, and Denny Weiss on guitars. Daryl Deloach played tambourine, and he was in the band. And I can only figure that the reason he was in the band is not because of his expert tambourine playing skills, but his mom and dad let the band record in their garage. So I guess
Mm,
they kind of had to let him in the band there at that point.
yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
He had
but
a
we'll get
station
to
wagon, right? He was the only one in the band that had a
well,
station wagon.
and he had a PA, so they're like, yeah, I mean, I guess
Right,
it's somebody else to chip in for beer and pizza.
right,
So,
right.
so in summer '66, the band moves to Los Angeles. Willis leaves. Jerry Penrod joins. Shortly after that, Jack Penny leaves to go back to school. Ron Bushy, who is their drummer, who is going to be kind of the mainstay here later on, joins. The man responsible for that incredible drum solo. Uh, so in '67, the band is playing all over California. They've
Right,
got their first core lineup and they're playing all over there. They get signed to ADCO, which of course, as you know, is a subsidiary of Atlantic.
right.
After completing their record of Heavy, only Engel and Bush remain. Everybody else quit. So
Well, I think it's worth mentioning too that they really only had one single that came out. So Possession and then Unconscious Power. That was the only single that was off of that album, which
which are odd choices for singles. I mean,
yeah,
you don't have much else to choose from, but those are just
and and
seem like
and they lead
some of
the
the
album.
oddest choices.
So they
Yeah.
lead the album too. So to me, it's like, you know, we've talked about a lot about sequencing and things like that. So you have the first two songs that are, front loaded on the album, and then they do the same thing where they say, "Oh, here you go. Here's the singles." Yep.
So what's odd about this is Abco really told them, like, because everybody left except for Engel and Bushy, they're like, you guys either get another band together fast or we're going to shelve the album. So they quickly hire a 17-year-old guitar player named Eric Braun and Lee Dorman on bass. Weiss and Penrod end up forming
Captain Beyond.
Rhinoceros.
No, Rhinoceros, right? And then
Yeah,
Lee
Rhinoceros.
Dorman
Yeah,
is Captain Beyond,
you
yeah.
got it.
Which
Yeah.
I do have a story about Lee Dorman. I was working at a radio station years ago, and this is in my hometown. They would do sort of like this Woodstock kind of thing every summer, and I think Richie Havens played one year, and
Oh wow.
then they got Iron Butterfly to play, and this was probably 2003, 2004, something like that, and so Lee called the radio station. I was working. It was like on a weekend. I was working, but he arrived in town and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to call the radio station." And I don't remember why, but he was somebody was expecting a call from him or something like that, and he was like, "I'm Lee Dorman," and I was just like, "Yeah, I know who you are. You're the bass player for Iron Butterfly." But that was kind
He's
of
like,
funny.
you're damn skippy, I
Yeah,
am.
yeah, I'm Lee Dorman. Who do you think I am? But Lee Dorman has since passed on from this mortal coil in 2012. So, but yeah, I did talk with them real quick. Let's look at the chat here. Um, Old Radios is saying that Vanilla Fudge Season of the Witch is good. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
their stuff is. I mean it's okay. It's just
Uh,
stuff that's
vanilla,
you just don't reach for it.
it's
That's
very
it.
vanilla,
Yeah, you just don't reach for it. That's the thing. Yeah.
except for their rock and roll album, which their rock and roll album, I think, is their last album before they broke up. It's essentially like Cactus, which I love Cactus, so
That's the one
that's
that's sort of like
I
the
guess
Mount
my favorite
Rushmore
Vanilla
kind
Fudge
of one.
album. But
That's what it looks like on the cover. Sort of like
no, that one's awful. No, that was, I think that was their second record. This one it's got a white cover and in red lettering it says rock and roll, and
okay.
it's plain, but I mean it's essentially, like I said, it's like Cactus. So if you like Cactus and Bogart Beck and all that stuff, you might dig that.
Cool.
So okay, so let's see here. So what are your thoughts on that first record? I know we've kind of talked about it a little bit. Before I move on to their sophomore record,
I
what do you think
mean,
of that?
it's I, I just feel like there's a lot of like kind of like, hey, you know, we're heavy man, right? Like the name of the title, like this is heavy stuff, you know. But it's, I don't know. It's not like you said, they never met Blue
No.
Cheer, you know what I mean? Like it's not Um, and I think that's I mean, it has a nice psychedelic cover and all that, but it just doesn't do
Yeah.
anything for me.
What do you think it peaked on Billboard's charts? What do you think it peaked at?
I think it was still
With
pretty. Wasn't it top? It was still the top 100, right? I think, didn't it? Or
78,
yeah,
yeah, despite no hit singles, which I
yeah.
mean, I guess just going on, looks alone from the album cover, it's like, I hate to boil it down just to that, but I don't really know what else the reason, unless they got all their friends to buy it. So they had a ton of material left over off their first album. They actually had a working version of Inagata de Vida, Lonely Boy, Real Fright, which is one of my favorite songs by them, period. Filled with Fear, Evil Temptation, It's All Up to You, and Gloomy Day to Remember. So the band essentially had another album or so's worth of material either in the early stages or completely worked out. But in May of '68, the band records Inagata de Vida, and they release the single and the record both on the 14th of June. Doug Eagle wrote it after, I'm sure you know the story, after drinking Red Mountain wine. Bushy was writing the lyrics as Ingo was slurring so badly that Bushy wrote down in the Garden of Eden instead of in the Garden of Eden. So that's Waka Waka. That's where that comes from. So
At least he didn't write down what what do you say?
what?
Dun
You said
dun
what?
dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun.
But you got to
What?
admit, that
It's catchy,
that is
man.
a pretty.
It's I mean,
It's
it's transcended. It's it was a joke on The Simpsons. Do you know that part where they're in church and then Bart switches out
yeah, of course. Where they're
the
playing the
thing and he
organ.
puts it in Inagata de
Hey, you
Vida and
remember
stuff.
we used to make out to this hymn?
And I mean,
Homer says, "Hey, Marge, you remember we used to make out to this hymn?"
yeah, it's just I mean, I played it in high school when I was in when I was in regular symphonic band. We played Inagata de Vida. Um,
Really?
yeah, we did. We played that song. We did like a six, like a seven, 60, like I'd say like late 60s, 70s medley. We did, what's Rare Earth? What is their big tune? Well, I can't think of it right now.
I'm
What did they do?
celebrate.
No, 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 no. There was, what the
Oh,
heck?
you're talking about get ready because here I come.
That's it. That
Get
was it.
ready, get
Yeah,
ready.
get ready.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was like we played that
yeah.
and played that. I mean, um,
Chicago.
no, I don't. I'll have to. I can't remember what was all on there, but that was sort of an introduction to that sort of music for me too, because it was like, oh yeah, this is it. But it was like,
Yeah.
like they were really, honking the brass on that one. So, but yeah, I think it's, no, serious. But again, this is. I feel like it. Even
I mean,
the cover for that. I mean, it's just basically them playing, but it's, hey, this is there's something cool on here, man. Like, I
the
won't.
cover is the second best thing about that record.
Yeah, and I won't lie. When I found this record for the first time, I was like, oh man, Inagata de Vida. I'm gonna be listening to this record all the time, and I've probably played it twice since I bought it. But they're all playing Mosrites too, for the guitars. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Like Johnny Ramone played it.
Yeah,
So I
I did
think
not notice that.
I think I'm trying to think if I think Wayne Kramer played one for a little bit before he went to the Strat. So. Um,
Very cool.
But yeah, the one song took up the whole side. Oh, look at that, Uncle Bo's on. Look what the cat dragged
Boy,
in.
oh boy, oh boy.
Hey, Uncle
What
Bo,
is up, Uncle Bo
drinking some Iron City iced tea, Uncle Bo.
from the Great White North or Pacific
Pacific
Northwest?
Northwest.
We have to the
He's
Great White
Alma.
North via Seattle.
That's right. Not necessarily
So,
Minnesota, but okay. So yeah, so what are your thoughts on Inagata Vita? Like that album is like, I mean, when you found it, were you like, oh my goodness, is this
yeah.
like this is awesome?
Oh
I
yeah.
finally got this
Yeah.
album.
Yeah, and Inagata de Vida is cool, but I mean, that's definitely a record that I flip over and only play the B side because that A side with "Are You Happy?" is, oh my gosh, some of that is just absolutely terrible. The record cover, like I said, is the second best thing about that album.
I like
It really is.
I
There's
like
nothing there.
yeah. Well, and I like too that there's there in one of those videos that we watched where they were talking about, oh, Inagata, or maybe I don't know if that was one you sent me, or maybe I just watched another Iron Butterfly thing. Yeah, it was something on VH1 that I was watching that had it. It was like somebody had uploaded it from VH1, and they were like, we're glad we recorded it when we did because it became like an hour long. It's just like, could you imagine? Like, like we're gonna do, it's as bad as Toad on Wheels of Fire. Let's just put it that way. Like, it's just like, you know, it has that riff. Like, okay, congratulations, you wrote an amazing
Well,
riff, but then it just goes, nowhere. So,
at least the drum solo's shorter, so there's
right,
that.
yeah,
Now, Ringo Starr was inspired by that and the song "The End" uh,
okay,
for that little drum solo. So I guess you can thank them
okay.
for that. So that moves us to June and July.
Yep, going all around the kit. Sorry, I was just singing in my head.
There you go.
So you said
We'll
July of
finish it.
no.
And in the earth.
Yeah. I love the three different guitar solos too. Like,
Uh, oh, it's great. I mean that is one. Abbey Road is one record that I just never
let's
tire
just
of.
for the rest of the show,
I never really tire of it.
let's just sing Abbey Road a cappella. We know all of the
Because the world. Oh, we're not doing that.
no,
Okay.
no, gotcha.
All right. So that moves us to June and July of '68. They went on a tour with Jefferson Airplane, which is, I guess, probably the
Expected.
best band
Yeah,
that they could have put with.
that's
Yeah,
expected. I think that
yeah.
makes sense.
I guess Quicksilver was booked, so they put him with Airplane. Um,
But
and
that's the thing too.
that single.
Just like Vanilla Fudge, where they're like Led Zeppelin open. We were headlining and Led Zeppelin open for us. Like, they both said that. They both were saying that because
Yeah.
they toured with
No,
Led
no,
Zeppelin
no.
too. Yeah,
The way these bands talk about it, you think they were like Jesus and the Beatles. It's like, come on, man. This is like, yeah, you guys were popular, but like you weren't. When did you open for Zeppelin? For like a week before they were
right,
like, okay, like
right. Till
let's.
everybody caught on and they were like, "Wait a
Yeah.
second, when are you
But for
playing?"
those 7 days, we
Yeah,
own Jimmy Page, man. You know.
just because you were booked at
Um,
the Fillmore East and and then they needed to
our
bring
name
Zeppelin.
was on the marquee with them because we were playing the following week, man.
Right. Yep.
So the single peaked at number 4, and I did not know this, but by the end of the year, the album would have sales of 8 million copies,
Well, so
outselling every
for
album in the history up to that point.
first record to ever go platinum, I think. I think that was right. Am I right with
Yes.
that? Okay, yeah.
Yep. Yes. So outselling every album in history up to that point, which I'm trying to think like, wow. I mean, this sold better than like Revolver.
It, it's insane. It sold more than Elvis Presley's "How Great Thou Art."
It sold better than Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass Whipped Cream. It
Oh
sold better than the Shag's Philosophy of the World. It
man,
sold better than Captain Beefheart's entire catalog.
I think that was before. That was Captain Beefheart was after that. You can't do that. but
Oh,
what album?
well, thank
Hold
God
on,
for
hold on,
that.
hold on. So what we need to figure out is, so if this was the top selling album of all time at that point, what was the top selling album of
At
all
that
time
point,
prior to that? Would it have been Sergeant Pepper? Would it have been like, what would it have been? It
I
had to
mean,
have
I
been
would guess yeah, I mean,
Sergeant
it would
Pepper,
had to have been.
Magical Mystery
I
Tour.
mean, nah, no, Magic Mystery Tour didn't come out to like in the States. Like, was it a full album in the States
Yeah. Well, but
or was
yeah,
it just the EP? Okay,
EP in the UK.
so so I mean, Peppers is what I mean. Maybe the Doors' first album. I'm sure that would be on that list.
But the
Well,
Doors'
I don't know
first
at that
album
point
wasn't platinum.
was an initial
Not at that time. Yeah.
success.
Um, what the heck would it
I
have
don't know,
been?
man.
Bing Crosby's
I,
Christmas record? I mean,
Frank Sinatra or Elvis? I'm gonna guess.
it had to have been something by Elvis, right?
I
But then
mean, in
again,
the
he was
wee
all
hours,
45s.
or
But he was all 45s. Like, Okay, so
Yeah, but would you count? Would
what would be the best way to Google this to find this answer? So, because if because
best-selling albums prior to 1967? Best-selling album of all time prior to 1967? Sold better than Mass Marauders. we talking about the bootleg, or are we talking about the Tribe Called Quest record?
so it probably was Sergeant Pepper. I mean, because
I would guess either that or something by Frank Sinatra. Um,
so I guess what we can look at is okay. So let's look at this. So this is like greatest albums of all time. Um, what is on here prior to 1967? And they don't even do that. It's now like 20 to 29 million albums. Now, the Grease soundtrack, good to know that that sold between 20 and 29 million copies. That's why the majority of those were dollar records.
well, it's pretty damn good, so there's a good reason. You're the one that I want.
You're the one that I want. Um, hmm. Carole King Tapestry was 71. Simon and Garfunkel
That's
Bridge
a
Over Troubled
fantastic record.
Water, 1970. Um,
It's got to be the Beatles. It's got to be something by the maybe Meet the Beatles. Could it
so
be Meet
so
the Beatles?
Elvis's Christmas album was released in 1957. That has sold 20 million copies of all time, right?
Holy smokes! Well, yeah,
But how
okay.
many of those do you think would have been sold prior to, you
Couple
know,
million, three, four, five, maybe, maybe. Well, it can't be more than eight. So five, six.
no, 20 millions of the total. So, oh yeah, so it was
Well, yeah,
more.
the
Yeah,
total.
right, right, right. I got you. I
Right.
understand what you're
You
saying.
see, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, here you go. Here it is. Here's the timeline of the highest selling record. Do you
Perfect.
want you
Let's
want you want
let's.
to hear this? You want to hear this? This
No,
is
no, I'm
great.
serious. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is
Go for it.
this is some fantastic content right here.
Well, let's go.
Um, and you know what's funny? It's in here.
Steve Martin,
It's in here. It's in here, and we know it, and we know that it's in here, right? Okay, so 19. We'll start with 1945.
Bing Crosby.
Various artists, the song Oklahoma, they sold a half a million at that time, right? Al Jolson, the Al Jolson
The guy
story.
from Ministry?
No,
Oh,
this is 1946. 1956, various artists, Oklahoma, the LP album. People loved Oklahoma apparently in the early 50s. Um,
eh,
1957. Uh,
didn't sound like a great place.
this is hilarious to you because this is all of these records. This is gonna jog your mind here because these are all thrift store records that we've seen hundreds and thousands of times. All right, here you go.
Makes sense.
1956, 1957. We have various artists, 2 million copies. My Fair Lady, Rex Harrison. You've seen that
Ah,
record. You've
I
seen the record.
have.
You could describe that record to me, Steve. Right? What's the cover look like?
It's got My Fair Lady written on it.
And there's a guy that's yeah. He's on there.
It's white cover.
White cover, exactly. All right, 1960. This is another record we used to see all the time. Was the soundtrack to South Pacific. South
Okay,
Pacific, right? It was always
it
there
makes
was
sense. Okay, so there's a lot of movie
movie
soundtracks,
soundtrack stuff. Yeah.
obviously.
This one has a close, again, a soft spot in my heart. Um, had it on vinyl. Actually, I just purchased it on CD maybe a couple months ago. It's Von Meter and the First Family,
Okay,
1963, right? So again,
okay.
there's that one, and that sold 4 million copies. Um, and then at 8 million copies, various artists, the Sound of Music soundtrack. So that's all.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even though
All
that's
right.
8 million, I don't know if that's of all time. If that's all time, that makes sense. They probably didn't sell 8 million right then and there. But I would,
No,
but I would,
no.
I would say the majority of that 8 million were sold within.
I, I don't think in 1985 they were selling that many Sound of Musics on.
Yeah. So it,
Not
it
many people were going to buy that. So yeah, it's
it
probably
sold
of all
it
time.
sold 20 million copies worldwide of all time. Came out in 1965.
Okay.
So that would have been at that point the number one record. I don't know why Iron Butterfly is not on here. I'm not sure why. Um, I'm not sure why that's not on here. It goes from that and it goes to Carole King Tapestry, 10 million plus in 1973, and then again the Sound of Music hits 10 to 15 million, 75 in 1975, 76. Carol,
Really?
Carol King
Well, I
Tap,
guess it's a 10-year anniversary. That makes sense.
um, and then Carol King Tapestry in 1976, 13.5 million copies, and then in 1979, do you know what absolutely destroyed all those other albums that we just talked about that you've
Yeah,
seen?
Dynasty, Kiss.
It
In '79.
well, 79 would have been when it was, but this album definitely came out before 79.
Oh, before '79. I was going to say something like the Knack, but before '79.
It actually came out in 1977, and you know this album.
The Eagles,
Oh,
their greatest
boom,
hits.
boom. There you go. Andy got it. Saturday Night
Saturday Night
Fever.
Fever.
That's
Yeah,
right. You
yeah.
got it. That's it. And then
I
that,
can't have you.
and then in
Again, another movie soundtrack.
yep. And then
So what you're
1980.
telling me is movies make money.
Have you seen the Super Mario Brothers movie yet? Did you guys see that yet? Did
I
you
have not.
you gotta go
No,
see it?
I need
Yeah.
to. I do. I
They
do.
already made like $1 billion. I heard that when I
Did
was
they really?
pumping gas. It was on the little gas station news thing. Um, and then 1984 was Michael Jackson's Thriller,
Thriller, of course.
do 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 do, which I'll tell you what, man, that might have sold 35 million copies, but you do not see that anymore at thrift stores. No way, no way. Thriller, off
Nope.
the wall.
Because
They're great records.
people who
They're great
buy it, they're going
records.
to keep it. Why
They're
would
great records. Yeah.
people are going to keep it? Yeah, they are. You're going to keep them.
All right,
PYT. You pretty young thing.
back to Iron
Okay,
Butterfly and their 8 million
so
albums.
so I like the Michael Jackson tie-in with Iron Butterfly. I feel like that makes no sense, but somehow makes sense at all. This is good.
Yep.
Um, I feel like this is kind of like when psychedelic became a household name and it started to get parodied.
Yeah,
Like
68.
like
I
how
mean, that, yeah.
where they were kind of like it was like in vogue and like it was like, oh, we're gonna have like you could probably walk into a store and buy some goofy ass shirt that was kind of psychedelic looking. So I kind of think that's when that like fully injected itself into everybody's lexicon and everybody's everyday
Well,
habits and shopping habits and consumerism and all that.
think about the timeline of psychedelic stuff. So you have Revolver in 66, you have, Dylan going electric, you have all of that sort of countercultural stuff really picking up steam. By 67, that's in the mainstream, it's the thing. And then by 68, it's passe. It's no longer, it's not the summer of love.
Now we're wearing cowboy hats.
We have Altamont, the 68 begins, and that's, yeah, it didn't end on a good note. But yeah, you're right. So that sort of, it became the pop culture. The counterculture becomes the pop culture, and then the
Isn't that
counterculture
the
has to
way it
become
goes?
something. Yeah, that's what it has to do.
Yeah.
So
When your parents are like, I like this music, you
yeah,
know?
well, but then again, think about 68. Think about what the Stones did. Think about what the Beatles did, where they just became very raw. You have
Right.
Beggar's Banquet. You have the White Album, which is a pretty raw album. A lot of the
Oh, yeah. Oh,
values
yeah,
on
of
it. So,
course. Yeah.
yep. Um,
So that brings us to, I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, and then yeah,
You,
and you sort of have, Woodstock is the culmination of that, where that becomes, by that summer, the summer of '69, I bought my first six the five and dime.
Man, you beat me to it. I was going to let you finish, and I was like, great minds. So,
but yeah, go ahead.
all right. So 60, that brings us to, it's 1969. Okay. In January, they released Ball, peaking at number 3. This is a very soulful record. This was, I kind of like feel like this was their their album to really make their stamp. Like they had the biggest selling album of all time, up to that point prior to this. So they really kind of had to make a stand. They could have released, they should have been a psychedelic masterpiece, but alas, they did not ask me. But they were booked to play Woodstock, I'm sure, as you know, but they got stuck in LaGuardia Airport. The promoter at Woodstock, they've asked them to be patient, and they're going to get to them when they get to them. They got a lot going on, but I'll let you.
Right. So there's that, they fly into LaGuardia and they're saying, "Hey, send a helicopter so that you can come pick us up because there's a traffic jam and we can't get in." And did you write down what the telegram said that they sent back to them?
So their manager basically told them, like, this is what you're going to do. You're going to come pick us up in a helicopter. You're going to pay us immediately. Then you're going to fly us back here. So John Morris sent a reply back to them, stating the following. Now, every first word of this is
For
underlined, and
reasons
I
I
will.
can't go into.
If Yeah, for reasons I can't go into until you are
Until
here, clarify until
clarify, right?
clarifying your situation. No
Knowing
is spelled KNOW. Knowing you are having problems, you will have to find other transportation
right.
unless you plan not to come. So, which
Bum,
spells
bum,
out
ba-na-na-na, bum, bum, bum.
"fuck you," which is what it spells out. So obviously that didn't sit well with them, and so neither party was happy, and so they didn't play Woodstock.
So so
So there's that.
I want to take a moment to talk about that for a second, though. So how how do you feel that Iron Butterfly's legacy would change had they played Woodstock?
I think it would have been about as memorable as didn't Sha play Woodstock?
They did play. They played
I think it would be. I mean,
after Butterfield, before
well,
Jimi Hendrix.
so I don't think it would have had an impact because what would they have played? A 45-minute version of Inagata Vita. What was
But
their set time? Theoretically, half an hour. They probably would have played Inagata Vita. They probably said, "Hey, how you doing? We're Iron Butterfly from Los Angeles. 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da," and they just played that.
but much like we have WrestleMania moments, we have Woodstock moments, right? Um, do you think it would have done something? I mean, I'm not trying
I
to
don't.
lead you. You don't think it would have changed anything? So it would.
No. Mark, there's nothing there. We're jumping ahead, and God bless these guys. I don't mean to criticize them, be so harsh. This is just one dude's opinion, but it's hollow. There's nothing there. There's no sustenance. There's nothing there. So, regardless of them being exposed to a bigger audience, I don't necessarily know that that would have somehow made their songs have would have made their songs better, just because more people have heard it. I don't see what that would have done for their legacy. I mean, think about all the bands that played in Woodstock. Sha na 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 played there, and they're terrible. So
but at the
there's that.
time, yeah, but at the time, I mean, and again, I'm not the biggest shana na 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 historian, but I mean, the reason why that they were able to sort of limp or even have a pretty good career past that. I mean, they did several albums. They were on Buddha. I mean, which is,
Yeah,
the distribution on that was garbage, but at the same time, I mean, they were able to, um, I don't know. I feel like there would be a little bit of notoriety, right? So there might have been a little bit more in the conversation when people talk about Woodstock, and even if they did just play Inagata Davida, and that was the only thing that they played, right? Um, I guess I would have to figure out. I mean, so we're thinking second night, right? Because if they would have been playing the first day, they would have probably been there, right?
they got rained out. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
the
the
traffic
only
jam
thing.
happened. That was like Arlo Guthrie. That was early that following morning, right? Because they played,
Yeah,
like Joan Baez and Newark Thruway shut down, man. A lot of freaks.
but but think about it. Like I think, and again, you and I disagree on this is great, which I love this. But I think they would have been like, yeah, those guys played at Woodstock. Yeah, that was cool. I think that's about as far as it would have gone.
Okay.
Again, my opinion. My opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just what I think.
I mean, I think that it would have. I think it would have done something. I mean, I think it would have put a little bit of gas in the tank. Um, could it have gone nowhere? Yeah, I mean that's probably that's probably going to be the case. I want to look here real quick since we're always crapping on Shauna now. I'm just curious in the let me see here. I'm just curious on what their how did post Woodstock? How did that sort of what does their catalog look like because of that? And I don't know.
It's not good. Spoiler alert.
Where's it at here? Sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Anybody know? Sha-na-na-na-na. There you go.
Yeah, Andy brings up Quill. I still have yet to listen to that record. I don't ever see that, but I know Andy's brought that up. I think a couple of times. Are you a fan of that? Is it worth
It's good.
seeking
I mean,
out?
their set is pretty good too. I mean, it's and it's
Yeah,
they're one of the again they're one of those bands that I think a lot of that their performance at Woodstock. I think people left there saying, "Hey, we saw this band called Quill, and I'm gonna go buy their record now," right? And I mean,
yeah, but
I don't
okay.
go ahead,
What did it do for him? I mean, it sold some records.
right? But they're part of the conversation. That's what I think is the thing,
Yeah,
right? You know what I mean? Like,
fair enough.
you know what
Fair
I mean?
enough.
When people think about Quill, they don't think about, oh, hey, there was a show that they did at the Fillmore West that was amazing, or Fillmore East, or whatever it is. It was at Woodstock. They played at Woodstock and they came out and they
Yeah.
jammed and it was awesome, right? So again, that's sort of what I'm thinking. So just looking at Sha Na Na here, and this is just silly, but I just want to explore this. Like, um, they had quite a few 45s, right? They were on Kama Sutra. I'm sorry, they weren't on Buddha. It's basically the same thing. But I mean, 1969, 1971, 1972, 1973, 1974, 1975, 1976. So we know that Iron Butterfly put out two albums in 1975. Um, but who bought them? Tell me about that, Steve. let's get let's get to Ball. Tell me. So Ball came out, right? You said
Well,
that
they're
was.
currently on my want list in Discogs, so there's that.
I've never seen them. I've never seen those two albums. Yeah.
Me neither. I've never seen them in the wild either. They don't go for a whole lot. I think like $6 and $8. But they're probably, and I'm saying this with a straight face, they're probably pretty rare just because, again, like you said, nobody who was buying that, nobody,
Right.
unfortunately. So
Yep.
anyway, so all right, so that brings us to the end of '69. Eric Brown left after the last show of '69, wanted the band to move in a more hard rock direction. And spoiler alert, I think had they listened to him and done that, I think they would have, God bless you, I
Thank
think
you.
they would have been far more successful and they would have gotten what you talked about as getting mileage. I think that would have given them that lift and that pep in their step at least a couple more years. And we may have gotten that classic all the way around, not just one side, but that classic Iron Butterfly record, which I don't think exists. But unfortunately, they didn't. There were some great bands that
Because
were
that's it
formed out of
too.
the ashes of that.
That's it too. I mean, I think that um, you think about all the bands that performed at Woodstock, and they do have that
Mm-hmm.
classic 69, 70 album, right? And I think that has
Sure.
a lot to do with it, where they're in the conscience, hey, there's this band, we saw them at Woodstock, they were in the Woodstock film, let's go buy and again, it could have just been an absolutely terrible album. I mean, there's a lot of bands that, I mean, you have Burt Summer and, even some of the Incredible String Band albums. I mean, they're not as good as
Sha na na na
them.
na 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 na
Yeah,
na na.
but it's um I think, and again, I know we've crapped on them a lot, but at the
We'll
time
continue to.
though, that was like kind of in vogue where people were like, hey, you remember the 50s? Like people were looking back at like you know
American Graffiti,
right.
came out in '73, so that was, there was like a '50s revival there. I mean, hell,
Yeah,
Grease, later
right.
on in the decade.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But
you're right.
again they were you think about, here's a band that all they're doing is just a 50s revival band, cover band basically, but yet they're
Yeah.
outselling a band that released an album 2 years ago that sold 8 million copies that everybody and their mom bought. Do 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 do
So
do
maybe I'm
do.
wrong. Maybe I'm the crazy one here, man. All right. So 1970, okay. All across the USA. Mike Pira and Larry Reinhardt. They played with Greg Allman in this, or excuse me, Larry Reinhardt played with Dwayne Allman in the Second Coming with Greg Allman, of course. They're band prior to the Allman Brothers.
Okay,
If you didn't know, Greg and Dwayne were in the Allman Brothers. That's
right.
stupid on my part.
Those guys. Okay.
So yeah, you heard of them?
Wait, was it the
So
what was the
Meta,
name called? Wasn't the hour Second Coming? You said Second Coming? What was the name?
yeah, Second Coming.
Okay. When was
Yeah, that was the name
Hourglass?
of the one. I think that
Was that
was
even before that? Like
60.
66?
I think it was 66, 67. Um, so they played, or excuse me, so Metamorphosis was released in August of 1970. It peaked at number 16. And there's a tune on it called Stone Believer, which is, I guess, the closest that they're going to get to hard rock. And it's the best song on the record. And it just really kind of makes me pause. It's like, man, maybe this was like a tease of what could have been. But again, there's no real way of knowing.
Well, that
So,
that live album came out first,
um,
though, right? Didn't
it,
that come out like? Did you mention that? I don't know that was. Did
I
you?
did. I've not mentioned the live album. No.
So that came out in 1970 as well. So that came out before Metamorphosis. But I feel like
Yes.
this is if they would have played at Woodstock and would have heard them, this is what they would have sounded like. And surprise, surprise, there's a side long in the garden of Eden, baby. Yeah, on that. So
Well, realistically, I mean, what else would have been on it? One time I was working at the record store, and this dude who was a complete dunce from the other store called and said, "Hey, do you guys have Survivor?" And I was like, "Yeah, which one?" He's like, any." And I was like, "Yeah, we have their greatest hits." He's like, "Does it have Eye of the Tiger on it?" I was like,
no,
"Yeah, of course it does. What
no,
what else would it have on it?"
they decided not to put that on there. It's on the bonus 2 disc.
Yeah, it's a special limited edition, the Super Duper Deluxe.
Right.
Um, so that's pretty much all I have on 1970. In 71, they toured Europe, this time with Yes, which is an odd pairing.
Hmm.
Um, Doug
Well,
Engel was
but here's
tired of
why. Here's
touring,
why.
and
Because they were label mates. They were both on
okay,
Atco. That's why. That's
well,
probably
it
why.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Would you just seem like back then if you were label mates? It's like regardless whether you play like bagpipe jazz
Yeah.
and then whatever psychedelic rock. It's like I throw them together on the same label. We need to make money. You guys are going on the road together. Be
That's what
nice.
they did. Absolutely.
So Doug Engel was tired of touring and was unhappy with the soul direction of the band was going. So they were getting too R&B, which again, you go back and look at Ball, and that's a very soulful R&B record. I mean, it really is. And so I think he's a couple years too late on that. But the four remaining members released a song called "Silly Sally," which I have not heard. This was without Bushy. They took him out and had a session drummer come in, and they
Took
put
him out.
horns on it and made
They, they, they murdered him
uh,
and brought in another guy to
they,
play.
they they removed him. they
They forcibly removed him from the
they
drum kit.
removed him not from like Earth, just from like the session, and they basically made it sound like a blood, sweat, and tears too. They took him out just like that poor snowman in that video that we watched way back when,
Yeah.
getting murked in a greenhouse.
So that was.
That'd be
I'm
a cool
sorry.
name for
You
a
said
record.
silly
Murked in
stout.
a dream in a greenhouse.
There you go.
I think that's going to be the name of our first record. Murked in a dream
Murdered
house,
in a murderator.
greenhouse.
Silly Sally Stone Believer. I'll have to look for that one.
So yeah, Stone Believers is a good one. Silly Sally, I'll have to dig that one out. But Doug Engel agreed to play one last leg of a tour. This time with guess, Mark. I just want you to guess. I just want you to guess. They were on Atco, so there's that. I just want you to guess,
Ooh.
and it's going to be the most off the wall thing.
Ah, that's a good question.
They're Southern. That's all I'm good. They're
Is it the
Southern.
Allman Brothers?
I'm,
Is it the Allman Brothers?
no, no, no.
Marshall
That would
Tucker
have been
Band.
cool. No, no. You're kind of in that same vein
Molly
though.
Hatchet. No, they were on
Go,
Epic.
go, go, go further. Go further towards the center. Get away from the coast. It's not Georgia. It's
Uh,
not South Carolina.
I don't know. Tell me.
Go towards Texas.
Texas ZZ Top.
It's not. It's no. It's Black Oak, Arkansas. Because Can you imagine hearing In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and then Jim Dandy coming up on stage? I couldn't. That sounds fantastic.
I'd pay three
All
dollars and
right.
25 cents to see that in 1971.
So Bushy needed I knew I was going to mess this up. Shoulder surgery.
Mm.
And he was replaced by Manny. I'm going to butcher this last name.
Manny Mar-
Baratatame. Manny
Manny Ramirez,
Machado,
Manny
baby.
Machado, Manny
Manny
Ramirez.
Machado.
Yeah.
Uh, he's still playing baseball.
Oh
Manny
wow.
Ramirez. Yeah, no, he's like 86 and still playing baseball. He's probably not. He's probably like 40, 40, 50. So he played with in the Blues Image is what Manny was known for,
Okay.
along with somebody else. They had a lot of lineup changes, and I'm only going to go over a couple, and then I'm just going to say there's a lineup change because a lot of these guys were like, Phil Substation from LaGuardia, whatever, upstate New York, and this guy was from Scotland, and this guy was from Arkansas, and so on and so forth. But anyway, they broke up following a show in Oregon on May the 21st, 1971. So that marks their first breakup was in 71, in May, mid 71. The band was being harassed by the IRS for back taxes, which was another excuse that they said they broke up as they were tired of everywhere they were going, everywhere they were playing. There was some guy in dark sunglasses bothering them and wanting to talk to the legal department and so on and so forth. Dorman and Reinhardt went on to form
Captain Beyond.
Captain Beyond, which is a great record. I love that record. Early hard rock. We want to jump into 74. Do you want to talk about Metamorphosis or
Yeah.
the first breakup, the first of many breakups of Iron
No, I
Butterfly?
mean, again, it's they had 5 albums, in 4 years, and you're
Nathan's on. Let's say hello to Nathan.
what's up, Nate? Um, just checking in live. Okay,
Yeah, man.
enjoy. Have a good evening. Um, yeah, I mean, they've 5 albums in 4 years. Huge single things like that. I
It's a
mean,
lot of touring. That's a
yeah,
lot of touring.
I think I could understand how there's a level of frustration where they were just probably putting out records and nothing was happening with it, right? So you hit it big with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, and then what do you say creatively where you say, well, we need to recreate In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. How do we do that? And do you try to write another song that you know was
They did. They did on Metamorphosis. It
right,
closes the record.
right,
They
yeah.
they they tried to do that again,
Well,
and
that whole
obviously it
album
didn't go
has,
anywhere.
there's little sound effects at the beginning and stuff like that, and
It's up
um,
and down and up and down and up
yeah,
and down.
yeah, and they just, you could tell that they just weren't, they were just riding on fumes from since 1968, right? That was
Yeah.
kind of carrying them, as far as they were going. So I would imagine that there would, like I said, there'd be a level of frustration that, hey, we can't,
Sure.
we're not putting anything out that is being a big seller or anything like that. So what do you do?
Well, you break up and you go your
Yeah.
separate ways, and then you get back in 1974 when Brian, their guitar player, was contacted by a promoter to consider forming Iron Butterfly. Uh, Ron Bushy was contacted and he agreed. He brought Philip Taylor Kramer, who we'll get to a little bit later, on bass, and then a guy by the name Howard Reites, I think that's how you pronounce it, on keyboards, who he knew from working in a music store that he frequented. So I would have loved to have been a fly on that wall. Hey man, I'm reforming Iron Butterfly. You want to play
You want to
organ? Do
join
I?
Iron Butterfly, man? We're gonna
How
go on
hard
the
to sell
road.
was that being?
To a guy that works in a music
How
store,
hard to sell?
probably not that hard.
No.
Yeah.
You think I could get some money? I mean, maybe like $8, but you'll be on the road.
We're gonna go all around the country, man.
Do you like illegal narcotics? Have I got a job for you? How would you like to be in this touring rock and roll band?
Let me tell you about a band I was in 1968 that had the number one selling
Did I
album.
ever tell you about the time I won the 1983 World Series for the Baltimore Orioles?
Um,
Joe Stefano, baby.
what's your APR financing these days? Um, yeah, again, this is weird. It's weird that they're reforming. They're like, and so this is where it gets interesting, right? So we're mid '70s at this point.
Right.
What do those albums sound like? I mean, are they basically just a reunion act? Are they, like what are they doing? What's their set list look like?
They were. I have not looked into their set list, but they were very serious about putting out other albums. They toured for a little bit, and that at least gave them enough creative juices, I guess, if you will, for in '75 and in
But to be fair,
January.
but to be
So
fair, but to
they
be fair,
recorded these almost
just to be fair, it is MCA, right? So they did sign on MCA. If you want to, I mean,
yeah.
have you seen the CDs that MCA put out in the '80s? They put a lot of effort into
Don't get
them.
me started.
They put a lot of effort into those CDs.
Yeah, especially the liner notes. I love the liner notes when they look like this on the inside. I'm like, wow, that is actually. Hold on, this is the liner notes.
Just fold the paper in half and then put it in the CD case. There you go. MCA, right? Exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, that's
So
fantastic. Thank you so much.
so you think bands like Steppenwolf at that point, right? They're on MCA. You have um, who else is like Leonard Skinnerd, right? So you kind of have
Working for the MCA.
um, again. I feel like it's a subpar label, right? They didn't really keep it together, and they got sold out. But you got Neil Diamond pretty much. Neil Diamond and Jimmy Buffett pretty much. Keeping the boat afloat, right? I mean,
You got fins to the left, fins to the right.
Elton. There you go.
Jimmy.
Yeah, Elton.
Yeah,
Elton
well,
John's
yeah,
on
they
there.
had Elton John. Yeah, they
But
had. So there's that.
but I
There's
mean, they
that.
got strong artists, but they just I feel like
Mismanaged.
mismanaged exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they give this Iron Butterfly, pseudo Iron Butterfly, a two record deal,
And
1975.
I, I mean, you know what? At least it's not as bad as Leonard Skinner is right now, where there's no original members and they're still touring. I mean, this at least had some original guys, so there's at least I don't know something there. So anyway, in '75 in January they released a record called "Scorching," which is not
Scorching
surprising.
Beauty.
It's not that.
Scorching Beauty.
Excuse me, "Scorching Beauty." You're right. You're "Scorching Beauty." Um, I mean, yeah, it's not. It, it's like I was gonna say bad album oriented rock, but I don't know if there's a such thing as good album oriented rock. Like early Journey, like
Yeah. MOR. Middle of
like
the road. Yeah.
or like early Sticks, prior to all their hits and things like that, when they were like a prog-ish, like dipping their toes in prog a little bit. It's kind of like that.
Hmm.
But it charted, but only in Australia and at only 97 at that. So down under, they were still packing them in, maybe.
Scorching Beauty.
John Anderson sang on a song called Pearly Gates. So there's that, you know.
So there must have been
You
some
got
sort of
John
connection.
Anderson.
There must have been some sort of connection with
Well,
with you know.
they were labeled. Well, no, I
There.
guess they weren't at that
Well,
point.
not at that,
I
but
guess they
again,
were friends
they
from
might have,
touring,
yeah, may have
you
had
know.
made friendships and things like that. Come. I mean, well, who was what? Well, was Yes on MCA at that time? They might
No,
have,
no, Yes was still on Atlantic, weren't they?
but they were on Atco, and
Well,
then
no.
hold on, let's consult
Oh,
the
no.
archives. Go ahead, keep talking.
All right. So in '75, in mid October, Bill DiMartini joins the band. And then they release in October of '75, they release Sun and Steel. Um, the album explores other styles than what they were known for. If you're going to get another album mark other than Inagata Vita, let it be Sun and Steel. Now, let me explain. Some fans, stop that. Some fans are split on this record. Some fans say that this is
They
their
either bought
worst
it or they
album,
didn't
like
buy it,
Mark
and
did.
most of them didn't buy it.
And some people like it and some people just don't. So, no, but some people, like legitimately, some people consider, from what I've looked at, and I did pretty extensive research for 3.5 hours today, on Iron Butterfly that I'm never going to get back. Some fans call this their best record. Like some fans, all 30 of them put this above Inagata Vita, which is insane because it's okay. It's a decent record. Is it life altering? No, but what Iron Butterfly album is, Mark? None. So there's that. So is Sun and Steel something you're going to be searching for?
I mean, I might put it into YouTube and see what comes up. Um,
You're going
yeah.
to drag the cursor? Nope. Nope. Nope.
I
Okay, next
I
video.
mean, yeah, I just I mean, I'll give it a chance. I'll listen to it, but I think that if there was a reason to hear it, I probably would have heard it by now. I think I'll, you know, kind of default to that. I mean,
A long no.
yeah, long answer, long answer. No, yeah. I mean, I'll listen to it for curiosity's sake, but
Yeah.
um, I mean,
I mean, it's a 1970s Iron Butterfly record. I mean, let's just
if
stop.
I
And
can't if
again,
I can't get into the 1960s and the early 70s Iron Butterfly records,
no.
I certainly am not going to get into the mid 70s Iron Butterfly records.
So here's the thing that I think is charming, and I'm saying this with all sincerity. I think that maybe charming is not the best adjective to use, but I think that it is enduring, I guess is probably better, that you have a band that is still willing to put out new material despite its quality. It's they're at least attempting to put out that kind of material, and they're not just what many bands do nowadays is just rest on their laurel and rest on their back catalog and all that.
And to be
They're at least attempting. They're trying. They're at least trying, much like the Doors did.
Yeah.
After this post Morrison. I mean, doggone it, those guys try. And again, I'm saying this with all sincerity. I know I've kind of goofed and things like that, but I admired that never say die, never quit attitude.
Yeah.
Just give it your best.
And to be fair, I mean, Metamorphosis is what, 71, right? I think
Yeah,
it's 71.
70, 70,
70.
71.
Okay.
70.
70. Okay. So, but it was like end of 70, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so really, if you think from 70, 71-ish, right, to 1975, I mean, you're not too far removed from that. That's 4 years
No.
ago, right? And I mean, if you think about, the passage
How
of
slow
time,
news travel is. Everything wasn't
4 years,
instant.
4
Things.
years, hey, there's probably a lot of people that didn't, hey, that's Iron Butterfly. That's the Iron, again, you could probably play. You darn well better believe that if you bought a ticket, you're gonna be hearing Inagata Vita before that night is over, right? I mean
Of
that's
course, of
yeah.
course.
But
I
who's gonna
mean,
say?
you know,
So this is what gets this. This is where we can kind of go on this tangent here about. So the guy's name Philip Taylor Kramer, right? That was his name, right? Philip Taylor Kramer.
that was his name.
That was his name, right?
That was his name. That
He had a
was his name.
he had a Ford Aerostar. If you want to know what kind of car
He
he was driving, right? In '93, he was driving a
he
Ford
did.
Aerostar. Um, the interesting thing is that so he's the new bass player, right? So we'll just
Right.
set this up. So he's the new bass player. He plays with them for 2 years. These two albums come out, and then at some point he decides that he wants to go back to school, and he
Right.
becomes an electrical engineer and basically works for the government. Um, and then in the early '90s, he mysteriously just disappears for what, 95? It was 1995, and then he was on Unsolved Mysteries.
1999.
No, no, they found him in 99.
99.
No, they found him in 99. Didn't he
Are
disappeared
you,
like in 95, I think.
did he? No, I think he disappeared in 99. Maybe
They
you're right.
they found him in because remember that thing about
Okay.
Unsolved Mysteries, right? So, which by the way, as soon as that got on, I was turning lights on in my house and looking around and
Dude, I'm a big guy. I'm a grown ass man, but I hear that theme song. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Where's the office? Put the office back on. I'm not watching this. I'm not
I'm
watching this.
I'm instantly 8 years old, scared half to death about there was a mysterious disappearance where he just was
Do,
vaporized.
do, 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 do.
So the bass player just, is one day disappears, right? So there's mysterious circumstances
Well,
around it.
but
Well, and let's be sensitive as far
yeah,
as with what he says. So there's a 911 call that he sort of says, "Hey, this is something I'm going to do," and it's 30 seconds long.
right. He he
And
he
yeah,
he threatens to unalive himself. Unfortunately, to the 911 operator. But he kind of left. So let's back up just a little bit before that. So a month prior to his disappearance, he'd been working on this. And I don't know how this begins to work. Somebody much smarter than me and will probably understand this. But
it's
basically,
basically
it's a computer.
it's like Star Trek, the transponder room. He basically
So,
is moving particles at light speed that are doing that. That's basically what that was my take on it.
uh, to boil it down, yeah, it's essentially what it does. Basically, it's you can use a computer and a camera to find a missing person, and
Right.
apparently somehow would be able to show you in mere seconds where in the world that person is.
Right.
Um, very Star Trekian, if you will.
That's right.
Star
So
Trekian.
but that was his life's work was like this, and also too like the
This theoretical physics
physics
and
of like
and all of
gravity,
this.
yeah, gravity, the transportation through
Stephen
gravity,
Hawking stuff.
yeah. um so what's
Yeah.
your take on that? So that there's a lot of conversation that he hadn't slept for 10 days, he was working on this, and
Um, you want to know my take on it?
let's hear your take, Stephen.
All right. So this guy comes up with all this stuff. Well, how are you going to sell that? How are you going to sell it? I can't say, Mark, this is a pen that never runs out of ink. I'm going to have to show you that it never runs out of ink, right?
Okay.
So I disappear. You use this machine and find me. And then I'd say, hey, you found me. Here's the patent and give me some money.
Hmm.
Or it could horribly backfire on you and you
So,
don't
so you're
make
going
it
the conspiracy
back.
theory route, is what you're doing, is what you're saying.
And I'm not a conspiracy guy at all, but think about, I mean, either that or, I mean, sleep deprivation can do some wild things to people. I mean, if this guy was, if you're not sleeping, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not eating right, you're not thinking straight, you're not, having those moments to recharge your batteries and reflect and, calm down and center yourself. I mean, temporary insanity and, who knows? I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think he was kidnapped by foreign enemies and
The KGB came and got him. No, I do think that there was, that he might have. So he was at the airport, right? He was going to the airport to pick somebody up, and he was there for a little bit,
and completely turned around?
and then he left, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like there might have been something where so he'd been staying up for several days in the Chelsea hotel, writing "Sad-eyed Lady of the Lowlands" for you. Um, No, I think that he was staying. He was sleep deprived, like you said, but he was at the airport for about an hour, and I think that maybe at that point he sort of had like a moment of clarity. He had been sleeping for a while, and then he just kind of said like, okay. So he started making these phone calls to people. He had time to think. He was at the
Yeah.
airport in the car, whatever, and he's, hey, I gotta go. You know what I mean? I need to go. I need to rest. I need to whatever. We have a breakthrough here, whatever. And then on his way back home, fell asleep in the car and right off the side of the cliff.
I mean, that's very plausible. Some people think that he's imprisoned in cyberspace, which there's not enough drugs and enough theoretical physics that I can know that can think of be like, yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, often the most simplest solution is is the correct answer, and that is probably more than likely what it is. I don't think there was anything nefarious involved with his disappearance. They said that he did die from blunt force trauma, but they don't know if that was suicide, homicide, or an accident. Obviously, if you're going to go over a cliff, there's going to be those kind of injuries that you're going to sustain. So
Hmm.
probably more than likely what the case is. But a really sad story of somebody that just,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there
is
was.
not taking care of themselves and just gets wrapped up.
I mean, but again, there's, that you can tell he's probably somebody that became hyper fixated with his work, and where do you want to sleep or do you want
Sure.
to kind of finish this? Yeah, and I've had moments where I've done stuff or I've gotten excited about projects and things like that, and um, yeah, next thing I know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to do, and again, you're still trying to have a normal life
Much
and
like
things
this
like that.
show.
Right. Yeah, but it's about my bedtime, so we'll be wrapping it up here shortly. But again, it's one of those things you can just go
Yeah.
and you can if you have something that you need to talk about or you need to think about, your brain is in that direction. So yeah, and I mean again,
Sure.
it's hard to say, right? It's hard to speculate. Um, you know, has there been you think about think about when you're a kid and you have a sleepover and it's like the very first sleepover that you ever have. What's the one thing that you
Nobody's
don't
sleeping.
do? You don't sleep, right? And
No.
do you start getting crazy like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning where you're just like, you know, you don't know what you're
Arguing
doing and
about GoldenEye.
right, exactly. Right. You just need sleep. So I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. And again, I think it's the strange thing for me was every time that there was those news stories for them, and then they were like, he was the bass
Hmm.
player for Iron Butterfly. What did they do?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
Well,
dun, dun,
they
dun.
did.
But he didn't do that. He wasn't on that album.
It, no, no. But
So
again, that just goes.
yeah,
That's. I mean,
that's the
they're
perception.
unfortunately a
Yeah,
one-trick pony.
right. Where they're like,
You
oh
know.
man, but he played in Iron Butterfly, and they were, this band that had this huge hit in the '60s. And it's like, yeah, like he wasn't there. Like, yeah, that's sure he was in that band, but that perspective to me, I think is a lot. It really solidifies a lot of what we said, where it's just like
Sure.
that's what people think about of the band. That there, of
Yeah.
course, that song is massive, and I won't deny it. I mean, that's a massive song. That
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of people that know it. There are people that know that, and that's the only thing they know about Iron Butterfly because it's just it's so massive. But at the same time, it's unfortunately I think that that's the double-edged sword where there's not a balance, right? You don't have, oh, we
Right.
had three hits that were three mediocre hits, or three hits and then one big hit. We just had
And
one
you
big
can't
hit.
escape something like that, and you
Yeah,
you can't escape that. So your options are either to hate it and don't play it and go do something else with your life, or embrace it and keep playing clubs. Because if you have a song that massive, I mean, you can. I mean, granted, they're not going to be arenas and they're not going to be football stadiums or anything like that, but you can sell out clubs, probably, or at least play clubs, if
yeah,
not sell them out.
and they still do, right? I mean, they right.
You will still have an audience of something. A song like that will live on for generations and generations and generations. So you have a built-in audience for the next umpteen years. So
Right.
why not take advantage of it? You're playing music for a living, so
Yeah, and then
do your
again,
thing.
they play the oldie circuit or whatever, and like I said, even with that thing that I did at the radio station, that was still billed as Iron Butterfly. I mean, it was
Yeah,
Lee Dorman, right? So it was one of the original members. I'm assuming the drummer was playing with them because he kind of
yeah.
he continued on
he
throughout
he
and
he
all that.
becomes more or less a de facto leader of that band, or
Hmm.
at least in some respects. But I got a few little bit here, and I
All
know you want to get close to wrapping this up. So in '76 they were touring. In '77 they were playing small clubs and bars. Lee Dorman they decided to break up again. Bushy Kramer and D Martinez formed a band called Magic. Lee Dorman kept the Iron Butterfly name. and forms yet again a new lineup. And they played mostly the South in 1977,
Hmm.
which I is kind of odd, but that's as they say. Apparently, they were doing pretty well in that market. But in '78, a German promoter, this is a different one, makes an offer for another European tour. But he wants the Metamorphosis lineup. That was the caveat
Hmm.
to them putting together this tour. So they all agree, but at the start of the tour, Dorman's father took ill. So there's a band called Boxer, which kind of sounds like a softer, not softer, but like a poor man's AC/DC.
Okay.
Their bassist Keith Ellis was on standby. Like he went touring with them. He would be there, just in case, his father got ill, that he had to fly back to the States, that they could still fulfill their tours and still get paid. Unfortunately, Keith Ellis died of a drug overdose in '78.
Hmm.
So that brings us to late '78 when they returned from Europe. They got offers to play US dates because they had a pretty good success despite everything going on with them in Europe. So they do that. They embark on that tour in '79. Um, uh, Brand plays occasionally, and Bushy does too. But by that time, everybody left. And they had constant lineup changes from '79 to '81. The laundry list of guys that were in and out of this band, Mark, is
Yeah.
staggering. I
Yeah.
think that they are probably, if not the band that has the most members, they are certainly up there. Um, uh, so Doug Engel comes back in '82. They record an album worth of material, but it has yet to be released. It's shelved.
Hmm.
So in '83, they have yet again, guess what? More lineup changes. They record another album of completely new material. It also gets shelved. So there's two complete albums sitting in a warehouse, probably dry rotting at some point.
Hmm.
Um, so in '84, they are all booked on a Legends tour, and that includes Engel, Dorman, Campanero, and guitarist Steve Fisher. In 1985, they break up again. So they go silent in '86. Nothing happens. They're broken up in '87. Ingo, Branham, Dorman, and Bushy get offered a 30-day tour, which they agree to do, and they wrap it up in Madison Square Garden for the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary show.
Hmm.
So that gives them that big exposure. And much like your theory about Woodstock, that at least allowed a little bit of pep in their step because they continue to tour. And then let me see here, kind of got these out of order. Um, so that brings us to '88. More lineup changes, and they have another successful tour. In 1989, they play Woodstock '89. So they
Okay.
do eventually make it to Woodstock. Uh, um, in 1990, Bran is sick and he leaves for good. He can no longer play. They record a record with Robert Trepper, who, if you've seen Rocky IV, he has that a No Easy Way Out song in there. That's kind of what he's known for. It's intended to be the new Iron Butterfly record, but it gets shelved. They even had a name picked out for it, everything, We Will Rise. It was shelved until 1996. It was reworked, and Tripper released it as his solo album. So they had, at one point in time, three complete albums, some with even names and everything, that were completely shelved. In '91, Tripper leaves, Dorman, Rhino, Bushy, and Bert Diaz on keyboards. They hit the road. So from '94 to '97, Doug Engel rejoins the band, and he's in there for a long time. And they have a spring tour that's pretty successful in '97. They release a live DVD of this tour in 2008. And '99, Doug Engel retires from touring and singing for good. He says he's done. 2000, they tour. 2001, Dorman leaves. 2003, Eric Branham dies. 2012, Reinhardt dies, and Dorman dies shortly thereafter. In 2013, the band dissolves, but it's not over yet. 2014, Bushy plans on releasing a new record and yet another Iron Butterfly lineup. 2015, Iron Butterfly officially reforms. Bushy retires, unfortunately, in the same year from live performances, but he's still involved in the man. In what capacity? I don't know. Spiritual guru, financial advisor, uh, something. But in 2020, a new lineup with Bushy is announced in early 2020. This is pre-pandemic. Says that he will play occasionally with them on this tour, but obviously because of his age and health concerns, he can't commit to doing a full tour. And unfortunately, in 2021, Ron Bushy dies, and that is 2021. That is where the Iron Butterfly story ends.
It's crazy. I mean,
And their lineup changes are insane. Like I started to write out the names, and I'm like, I'm good. That's
just
going
don't
to
do it.
be
Yeah, yeah,
that's going to be 200 people on this list.
yeah.
You know, I'm talking every 6 months or so. Somebody's leaving, somebody's coming
But
back. This
but
guy gets upset. This guy leaves.
it's the same. It's the same thing that we said about the Birds, right? Like I think what they did with when they broke up the band and they did Captain Beyond, and you know what I mean. There was the other bands that they created. Um,
Which are much better,
yeah.
unfortunately. You know, well, or fortunately, depending on where you look. I mean, Captain Beyond. I think that Captain Beyond record is the
Well,
best
there are
thing.
two. There's two that they have. That
The first one, the first
the
one. I
first
mean,
one
the
is
second one's
fantastic.
good.
Second one's
Yeah,
good too, and all
yeah.
that. So, but yeah, I mean, you think about just how it's rough. Like I get it that you want to get a paycheck and you want to, it's your life's work and you want to do stuff with it.
People are
But
throwing money at them.
yeah,
You
I
know, they
mean,
wouldn't
if
tour if they weren't getting paid, and it's
exactly,
successful. Now, granted,
yeah,
again, they're not selling out arenas, they're not
yeah.
playing, these big ballparks or anything like that, but they're playing enough to make a living. So, I mean, I guess it beats working at the cleaners.
Yeah, well, and I mean, again, you think about, doing the oldies circuit. I mean, there was that one that was, uh, what Peter Newton from Herman's Hermits and the Turtles and
Yeah.
Gary Puckett and who else? The Association and all that. And man, they were selling out They were playing small theaters, but guess what? Every butt had a seat in it.
But think about it too. Do you give a hoot if you're going to go see Iron Blood or Butterfly? Do you care that the
No,
bass player is not the original bass player?
you
No,
don't.
because
You don't.
you're gonna sit there and you're gonna listen to the music because it either a reminds you of your youth or you're curious about that and you know the records and you just want to get to
It's
see
a
some
band from the
semblance of them
'60s.
live.
Exactly. Yep.
So yeah, so it's easy money. You're playing music. Could be worse.
What's the final verdict, Steve? What's the best album?
Their first record.
Heavy? You're gonna go with Heavy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's their most consistent record. I think Heavy's their most consistent album, and I'm gonna put number two, Sun and Steel.
Okay. We'll have to listen to that.
So,
Let's see how that is.
give me your thoughts.
I mean,
What's Iron Butterfly's best record?
I'm just gonna have to say Inagata Devita just because of, um, again, it pushed some boundaries, right? Where
Sure,
you think about
sure.
bands that have done sidelong thing. I mean, that's a single album, right? So that's not like a double album like
Were they
Wheels
the
of
first
Fire.
band to do that? A side long
I mean,
tune?
Love did that on Da Capo, which was what,
Oh,
60.
Da Capo, and I guess Dylan did that too on Blonde, didn't he?
Uh,
Isn't
Sad I Lives Living.
sad?
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't that a side long?
yeah. But again, I feel that the just even the being able to say like, yeah, this is one song, and you, but there's other bands that have done that, right? So there's bands that have done, like, even like I said, you think about the Capo, right? You think about that side long
Yeah.
tune. It's not that good, right? Uh, it-
No,
22 minutes is very difficult to fill. And
unless you're Pink Floyd, I'm not really interested.
well, but again, Pink Floyd is a lot of times those are just songs that can, same thing like Abbey Road, where it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like it's a sidelong thing, but it's just,
It's
one,
pieced together
it's
so
it's
perfectly.
it's pieced together. But I think the fact that they were able to do that and they sold a lot of records to do that, I think there's something to be said about
I
that.
mean, think about that. They sold a ton of records. You ask your mom. My mom
Yeah,
remembers
we
going
have
and
that.
buying that
Yeah,
record. She remembers going in and she said, "Oh yeah, I remember dancing to that record at parties." And she was like, "Yeah, I remember. God, this is super long and all that stuff." But yeah, no, I mean, that's one of those records that I mean, everybody's mom or dad or grandparent, somebody in their family bought that record at some point.
But I think, and again, I think that there might have been, and again, a sense of a novelty to it that, hey, here's this, like, listen to this. This is just one song.
This is
And
psychedelic,
yeah,
baby.
yeah. I mean, and again, that might have been somebody's first taste of like, hey, we can just experiment and we can do a sidelong thing. And I mean, again, that predates Dark Star on Live Dead, and
Yeah.
you know, sure,
It
there's
inspired Ringo Starr, so there's that. If you can say that you inspired one of the Beatles, you know.
so, but I think in their legacy, I mean, is gonna, kind of hangs on that album by far, right?
Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
but yeah, I mean, it's
I mean, they were able to play for, 50 years on that one song, so,
right. So,
there has to be something said for that.
I mean, all joking aside, that it's a feat, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it was pretty amazing that that was done, but at the same time, uh, I think unfortunately that they've been distilled down to that. Was that the same way it was back in the '60s? I have a feeling it probably was. So so when Ball came out and everything, and they're just here's Iron
Well,
Butterfly. They did Inagata Davida.
this is a band of just missed opportunities. They missed it playing in Woodstock. They missed on. That's the other thing too is I think they would have benefited heavily from a producer that could have kind of reeled them in and kind of get them to be define a little bit more. Give me your
Well,
your ethos. What are you hoping to accomplish with this? What's your mission statement with this album? Let's get a defined, crisp, clear goal in mind, and let's go for it. And again, like I said a little bit back in the show, I really, truly, honestly think that when Ball came out, that was literally their opportunity. It's like
yeah,
this is our opportunity. We're coming off this massive successful song. Let's get a solid 8, 9 songs together for an album, and let's really crank them out. And unfortunately, it's just not there. It's not there.
yeah. Well, and again, their legacy is that album. I mean, it's just um, like you said, they run Atco, like we talked about with moving from Atco to Atlantic, which is what Yes did, right? You think about
Mm.
how how their distribution and just, I mean, again, we're comparing two completely different bands here, but label mates, touring mates, whatever you may say there, they made that transition, had,
But what made Yes successful? They had a producer and they had a vision.
yeah.
You know,
Well, and again, I mean, you, they're not too far removed from each other, especially in the early days, right?
No, not in the early days.
Yeah,
No, in the early days, you
they're,
take the very first Yes album and maybe the second one, and they're
yeah,
very they're very close
maybe
to that
the
type of
UK
music.
version of an Iron
Yes,
Butterfly or something like that. So again, more pop oriented. They're heavy, but they're not, and that might have been it too. I mean, it might have been too poppy for, hey, I want to get a heavy album, but it might have been too heavy for the, oh, that's, too psychedelic, whatever. So, um, but I think that's a great place to end it. So, Stephen,
yeah. Thank you.
fantastic to be back on this rusty bicycle. I enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for everybody who
Yeah,
joined in and chatted with us. So we will do it again soon in the not too distant future.
Andy, you take care of yourself and tell a Blanchard.
When is that? June 3rd? That's coming up, right?
Yeah,
Is it the
yeah.
Omni or the Greensboro Coliseum?
The Greensboro
Omni
Coliseum, baby.
Greensboro Coliseum, Daddy. All right, everybody. Yeah, see you in December. See you in December, everybody. Merry
We'll
Christmas.
be back before then. We'll be. So,
Merry Christmas. We'll see you guys.
all right.